Hey guys, Poro here with another video, this time for a new series I've never really done before, and this is going to be who I think are the top players heading into 2026 across all regions. I'm doing this completely unscripted. I want this list to be a top 20 and I'm going to do it for all 5 roles, so if I'm going to talk about 100 players, I don't really have time to write all of that down on a script and then read it out, so I'm just going to do this completely freeform, and then hopefully I hit all of the beats for these players that I want to. We're going to start with top lane. I guess something else to mention is that this list, more than probably most of my power rankings videos, is a very self-personalized list. This is a list of who I'm especially excited for heading into 2026, and how I would rank them all in my own head based on kind of where I think their theoretical ceiling and floor would be. So because of that, there's going to be a lot of bias in this video, I would say, and in all 5 of these videos, there's going to be a decent amount of bias because I want to hype up the players that I'm personally excited for. With that out of the way, let's get right into it. Before I get into the top 20 though, I do want to mention a couple of players who are right outside of my top 20, who if somebody else had in their top 20, I think it would be totally fine. So the players that I have right outside of my top 20 are Rich, who is a player who's super volatile. Sometimes he's doing really good stuff, sometimes he's completely mediocre. I think that there's a chance that he could be good, but I'm not going to bank on it. I also have Perfect outside of my list. I know that he just made it to Grand Finals, and he had a really good Worlds overall and improved on a lot of his domestic mistakes, but realistically, he did have a lot of domestic mistakes. For basically the entirety of 2025, excluding Worlds, he would have a lot of solo deaths, he would lose lane a lot, and he was overall a liability for the team, so I'm not sold on Perfect just yet. I need to see him be consistent for a split or two before I'm down to say that he's definitely improved, so I still have him outside of my top 20. I also have Xiaoshu out of my top 20. There's probably going to be a lot of people who don't like that, because I know that there's a lot of people who are super high on Xiaoshu. Personally, I was never super impressed when I watched him. For those who are unfamiliar, he was the top laner for JDG, and before that he was the top laner for RNG. I wasn't super crazy impressed by him or anything. I can see that he has potential, but I feel like I need to see one more good split out of him before I'm willing to kind of make the jump and say that he's top 20 as well. And then I also want to give a little shout out to Cube. I think that Cube is better than most people give him credit for. I think that he is usually a fairly reliable top laner for a lot of the kind of mid-tier LPL teams, and I feel like he doesn't really get the respect he deserves, but he is also outside of my top 20. I guess I can also mention that I have a few of the LEC top laners sitting right outside of my top 20 as well. So for example, I don't have Merwin in my top 20. Same thing for LCS and LCP. Rest didn't make it. Fudge isn't in there. Like Adam, Dokla, those players aren't in there either. Yeah, so those are going to be my honorable mentions for top. The main ones being Rich, Perfect, and Xiaoshu would be the 3 main ones who are kind of right on the bubble. So if somebody has one of those players in their top 20, then that's totally fine. Anyways, getting into my top 20, in 20th, I have Sheer. He's projected to be the top laner for LNG, and he was most recently the top laner for FPX. So the things that you need to know about Sheer is that he is a very young player. He's listed as 19. There are a lot of rumors floating around that maybe he's actually not 19 and maybe he's like fucking 12, because if you look at his face, he looks like a teenager. Like it's actually crazy, but whatever. If you buy the idea that he's 19, then like we can chill. He is pretty tall, so you know, that's going for him. I think he's like 6 foot or something. So yeah, Sheer, he fits the kind of newer, fearless type of player archetype that you would expect from somebody who's still pretty young. He likes to pick a lot of carries. So like one of his most played champions last year was Gwen. He would pick Gwen a lot, and that pick, it was pretty strong for the first half of the year, and then towards the back half of the year it got nerfed and it kind of fell off. But he was somebody who would keep on picking it anyway, and he would just try to carry games. He would have a lot of random deaths here and there, but he also had a lot of games where he was putting the team on his back and carrying and had large amounts of golden damage. So he's a player that I'm personally super excited for. I want to see how he's going to grow and improve in these next couple of splits, and I believe in him a lot. In 19th, I have Clear. He's projected to be the top. Actually, no, he's not even projected. He's already the top laner for Tier X. Clear is somebody who, in past years, I kind of slept on a little bit. In my eyes, he was always like a bottom 2, bottom 3 type of top laner in the LCK, and I didn't really respect him that much. Then this year, things kind of turned around for him a little bit. I think that honestly, what I really think it is that I just started paying more attention to his gameplay. Like, I think in past years, I kind of just, he was on lower tier teams, and so I just kind of assumed that he was not that good because I realistically only watched like probably 3 or 4 games a year from him and wasn't even closely paying attention to him. But this year, I was impressed a little bit more. Basically, I spent the entire year thinking that he was a fairly reliable top laner. And then what I really want to point out, and the reason why I have Clear up so high, is because of the Asia Invitational. Now, I know that the Asia Invitational is not, or was not played as a serious tournament, but for the most part, when I was watching the gameplay, it still felt like the teams were, you know, they were trying to win. They were drafting reasonable comps. They were definitely like, it didn't feel to me like a fully for fun tournament. I know that not a lot of the teams scrimmed and that the teams didn't really go into it with like a live or die kind of mindset, but it still felt like a relatively serious tournament. And in that tournament, I thought that Clear was really, really good. For example, off the top of my head, he had one Renekton game where he was just absolutely popping off, styling on everybody. So, I mean, I think if Clear can show up like that heading into next season, then I'm definitely going to be a little bit higher on him, and maybe he can be pushing for like that top half top laner territory in the LCK. In 18th, I have Morgan, and Morgan is going to TL. He's the top laner for TL. People might be a little bit confused if they watched the LCK, because I feel like most people would probably have put Clear over Morgan in their LCK top lane power rankings. I've always been a little bit of a Morgan person. I believe that Morgan has very high upside. He's somebody who, in his career, he's had occasional highs and then a lot of lows. So, for example, when he was on HLE, I think that a lot of people considered him to be the worst top laner in the LCK when he was on HLE. Then he was kind of on Bro. Bro is kind of a team that people like to laugh at and be like, ah, this team sucks, this team is bad. But the thing about Bro is that they are a team who will randomly just play really well sometimes. Like, there's a reason why they just keep on randomly taking series against Gen G and stuff. And especially last year in the Kespa Cup, I was really impressed with all of Bro, including Morgan. I was super high on Bro coming into 2025 because of that, and obviously they didn't end up showing up that well, but I still think that Morgan has potential to be really good. I believe that on TL, it'll be a pretty good fit where he'll be able to feel comfortable, so that's where I have him. 17th, I have Bwipo. Now, Bwipo is technically teamless, I believe. I don't remember. I feel like I remember seeing some kind of announcement that maybe he was on like a tier 2 team or something as a jungler. I don't know. He's not playing in a tier 1 region for split 1 at least. But even though he is technically tier 1 teamless, this is where I would put him if he was, like, let's say he was still playing on FlyQuest or something. This is where I would have him. I think for the majority of the LTA North, he was the second best top laner in the region, I would say. It was, I personally had Thanatos as a clear first, but after that, it was a little bit of a toss-up, but I would have personally had Bwipo second. I think Bwipo is a player who has a lot of upside. He has a really big champion pool. He's not afraid to pull out picks that can win certain matchups or be really good with his team comp or really good against the enemy team comp, so that's a big upside for him. I feel like in games, he is willing to take a lot of risks to try to win the game or to get his team extra advantages. This is also where some of his downside comes in though, because he can be inconsistent sometimes. He can get solo killed in matchups where he shouldn't be getting solo killed. So sometimes Bwipo will put your team in a really tough spot, but other times Bwipo will completely carry the team and put them on his back, and then they'll win a game that they shouldn't have won. So this is where I'd have Bwipo. In 16th, I've got Driver from the LCP. Driver should still be on CFO. We don't really have much confirmed from the LCP yet, but there has been no news of Driver leaving CFO, at least as of right now. He's still projected to be on there. I think that Driver is a super solid top laner on specific things. So I think he's one of the best Scion players in the world. I think he's one of the best Ornn players in the world. He probably is the best Shen player in the world purely because nobody else plays Shen. And Driver is just, like, Driver's champ prios are really weird. Like, he was prioing Shen as, like, a top 3, top 4 pick in his champion pool. So when he gets some of those champions, he has really, really good team play. So he's fantastic at team fighting. He finds these miracle engages seemingly every game. I mean, CFO as a whole in 2025 were just a very good team fighting team, and I think that Driver was a big part of that. The main thing that's limiting Driver from going higher is that his champion pool is very small. The team tried to experiment with giving him some carries. Like, they tried to put him on Mbessa a couple of times. It never really looked that good. They tried to put him on Gwen, and it did look really good, but Driver has gone on record saying that he doesn't really like playing Gwen, so for the most part, his champion pool really is just limited to kind of 4 or so tanky, weak-sided champions, so that's limiting for him, but when he's on those champions, he's really, really good. Right above him in 15th, I have Kiaya, who is the top laner, well, okay, projected to be the top laner for GAM. Everybody thinks of GAM as kind of the Levi team, but realistically, for the past, like, 3 years, maybe 4 years, Kiaya has been the best player on that team, not Levi. Kiaya is a top laner who, I believe when he's in the zone, he is good enough to be contesting lane phase against the best of the best. I mean, like we saw, for example, way back in Asian Games 2022, Kiaya was beating Bin in lane and stuff. So I think that Kiaya's ceiling as kind of a carry threat and a laning threat is right up there with the best of the best. And if anything, the only thing that's holding him back is the level of competition that he plays against isn't necessarily that high. But I feel like every time he goes international, he's always showing me something to be impressed by. So I have a lot of faith that Kiaya is good. I think that GAM as a whole, and Kiaya especially, can make some mistakes regarding things outside of his lane and his lane matchup. I thought that domestically he was dying to a lot of gank timers that he shouldn't be dying to, and GAM as a whole would have a few map rotation mistakes here and there that would lose them objectives or get a few people picked out before objectives spawned, stuff like that. So that's what's limiting Kiaya, but I think in terms of mechanics and laning phase, he's right up there. He's really good. Above him in 14th, I have Broken Blade, who is projected to be the top laner for... Actually, no, he's confirmed to be the top laner for G2 Esports. Broken Blade is a really weird player. I think that there's a train of people who think that Broken Blade is like the greatest Western top lane talent that we have by a wide margin. And then there's another group of people who think that Broken Blade's completely washed and he's terrible. And I do think that Broken Blade in 2025 was fairly inconsistent. Like, for example, he had the end of his split 2 was not very good, and then he went to MSI and was pretty bad, at least in play-ins. In my opinion, by the time that he got to knockouts, he was looking a little bit better, but he had, like, for example, specifically a very bad series against Furia and against Gigo, and I feel like that's done a lot of damage to his reputation. But overall, I like Broken Blade a lot as a player. I think that he has a very high ceiling, where no matter what type of team he's playing against, if he's locked in, he is a player who can always be useful. And I also think that he has a lot of champion pool upside. I think that Broken Blade should get more credit for being an innovator than he does. A lot of the picks that he comes up with end up becoming staples later down the line. So he was kind of the first guy to bring out Rek'Sai top before that became meta in 2024. He was the first guy to bring out Zac top before people started playing that a lot. Recently this season, he was trying stuff like Mundo top, Swain top. He had this really interesting pick that I wish we got to see more of, which was he would counter Sion with a Kled counter pick, and at Worlds we only saw it once, I believe. I think that the only person who did it was Flandre, tried Kled, and AL ended up losing that game. I believe that was against CFO. But yeah, Broken Blade, he always has really interesting ideas, and a lot of times they're good ideas that the rest of the world takes note of and then tries for themselves, and then sometimes it just becomes meta. So I think that he has a lot of value in that regard, and I'm not too worried about him heading into 2026. In 13th, I have Kana, who is the top laner for KC. Some people may remember Kana for his really bad series against Fnatic in the World's Qualification Series, where he got solo killed by Oscarinin like 4 times, and it was overall just a disaster where he was very, very bad. So I feel like people will tunnel in on that and be like, oh, Kana, he's so trash, he got gapped by Oscar. But if you ignore that one series, which I would like to do, because I believe that a lot of KC's Split 3 playoffs issues were from internal issues with the team. If you choose to ignore that, Kana was pretty much the best top laner in LEC for the whole rest of the year, and it wasn't necessarily close. It felt like Kana would always generate a lead in lane against anybody. So, you know, heading into 2026, I expect Kana to be the same type of player. I expect him to be able to get an edge over all of the other LEC top laners and still be the best top laner in the region. As a whole, I would say I'm pretty excited for KC. I want to see how they do. I think that they definitely have potential to be the best team in the region if all of their pieces can click together. And I think there's a real argument you could make last year that Kana was KC's best player. In 12th, I have a name that some people may have forgotten about because his team was so bad last year, but I have Zika. So Zika was a very, very strong top laner in years that were not last year. So like in 2023, 2024, he was a super strong top laner, one of the like top 5 within the LPL probably, super high ceiling. Then LNG just went through a generational collapse in 2025. Like, they were horrible. Their team went through a few iterations. Like, they started out with, I believe they started out with Weiwei, Haichao, Fodic, and Zhuo, I think was their roster. I could be misremembering, but it just was not working. They were near the bottom of the standings. They swapped pieces around. They ended up dropping Weiwei. They ended up, they stuck with Haichao, but they got rid of Fodic. I think LP spent some time playing. Then they got rid of LP, and then they got rid of Zhuo, and then they were playing with, like, their tier 2 bot lane, which was like, I don't even remember, like OVO and something like that. I don't know. These players who will not be playing in LPL next year, who you definitely have not heard of before. And the entire time, Zika was still on the team, and in my opinion, anytime that I tuned in to watch LNG, it felt like he was still really, really good and was just getting absolutely elo held by his team. So heading into 2026, I believe he's projected to go to Weibo. Let me check. Yeah, he's projected to go to Weibo, and he'll have good teammates there. Like, let me take a look. So Weibo's projected roster right now is Zika, JJ, Xiaohu, Elk, and Urha. Yeah, that looks like a promising roster to me. So I'm expecting Zika to come out and be a strong top half LPL top laner again. I have a lot of belief that he can be really good. So that's the Zika placement. In 11th, right outside of the top 10, I have Kingen. There's this narrative surrounding Kingen that he was really bad before Worlds 2022, and then extremely good at Worlds 2022, and then he went back to being really bad again after that, and it's a narrative that people have kind of stuck with. But I think that actually, after Worlds 2022, he was good and has kind of stayed good. Like, I thought his entire year last year was really solid, and like, I mean, there's a reason why Nongshim were able to kind of float around the midway point of the region for the entire year. I mean, at the end of the year, they were definitely the 7th best team. I would say by the end of the year, both DK and FearX were ahead of them, but they spent a good portion of the year kind of contesting that middle of the pack spot. They got as high as 4th. They spent a lot of the year in 5th, and I mean, the players on that team were not, they weren't amazing. They weren't terrible, but they weren't amazing. Like, they started with Fisher and then moved on to Calyx. Their jungler was Gideon, their bot lane was Jiwoo and Lehens, and I still think Lehens is really good, but like, Jiwoo is not necessarily a piece that I would want on a roster that's contesting kind of those top tier spots. Same thing with like Fisher and Calyx. I thought that Calyx was promising, but still not players who I think would be on a top tier LCK team, and I attribute a fair amount of Nongshim's success to Kingen. I thought he was super solid last year. And I expect in 2026 that he'll be really solid again. Then we're getting into the top 10. In 10th, I have Siwoo, who is the top laner for DK. Siwoo is a player, honestly, I don't really know what to expect from him in 2026, because on the one side, he is an extremely mechanically talented player. I think he has a lot of potential to be super, super good in the coming years. So in terms of like how good I think they could be, I mean, this is the sky is the limit for this guy. I don't know how good he could be. He could be phenomenal. But towards the end of 2025, it felt like DK, their macro overall, was kind of collapsing. And then we got a look kind of inside with some documentaries and stuff. And Siwoo and CV Max were not on speaking terms. If I am understanding what happened in the documentary correctly, it sounded like Siwoo and CV Max, who's the coach, were just not talking at all. And CV Max is still the coach for DK. They re-signed him. So I don't know how that relationship's going to be. I don't know if Siwoo is going to continue to give CV Max the cold shoulder. I don't know if there's just going to be horrible chemistry for the entire year, and the team's macro is going to suffer because of that. So I'm a little bit hesitant to push Siwoo that much higher, but I do think he can be really good. I think that he's got massive potential. In 9th, I have Breathe. Breathe is currently projected to play for IG. There are a lot of people who think that Breathe was one of the best top laners in the region last split. I know that I had him ranked a little bit lower than people thought. I have Breathe as the 5th best top laner in the LPL. I think that Flandre369, Bin, and the Shy were all better than him over the course of the year in 25. So this is where I'm putting Breathe. He was solid on Weibo. I mean, like, Weibo had a lot of issues. Light was not playing well at all. It might actually have been the worst year of Light's career. I think that Tien was up and down. Xiaohu, who I thought had a pretty solid year overall, was also up and down. And then I thought that Urha was actually better than Crisp, and I was hoping that this team would stick with Urha, but they ended up benching Urha again and going with Crisp in Split 3. So the team, they were kind of riddled with issues. They were floating around the 5th, 6th, 7th place range for a solid part of the back half of the year. So yeah, I thought that Breathe was good, but I didn't think he was like the best top laner in LPL type of good, which is what some people here and there were saying. I think that Breathe was solid. In 8th, I have the Shy, and if I have this correct, I believe the Shy is not going to be playing in Split 1. I believe the rumor is that the Shy is going to sit out in Split 1. There's a lot of players who are sitting out in Split 1, for those who are unaware. There was like, because of the LPL player auction and players not wanting to go to the auction and stuff, like there were a lot of players who decided to take the opportunity to just take a break. Like for example, another player who's taking a break next split is Jackie Love. Right now the current rumor is that Jackie Love is still signed to Top Esports, but for Split 1, Top Esports are going to play Giachi. And it's a similar situation with the Shy, where I believe the Shy is still signed to IG and he's just not playing. I don't know what the deal is. There's a lot of players who are still signed to their teams, but are just not going to play in Split 1. I don't know if the Shy ended up re-signing with IG or not. That was like a big thing in the LPL offseason, was like, is he going to re-sign? Is he not? We don't know what's going on with the Shy. I still don't know what's going on with the Shy. Yes, I know that the Shy completely ran it down in his one series at Worlds against T1, but he was the best performing top laner in LPL in Split 3, and I want to respect that. I think if he's on a tank, he's really solid, and, you know, sometimes he'll pick a ranged champion and he'll just run it down and lose you the game, but then other times he'll pick a ranged champion and he'll have like double the damage of everybody on the rest of his team, and he'll be hard carrying on side lane and generating massive amounts of pressure for his team and like winning his lane phase super hard. I still think the Shy has the ability to do that. And then so when that kind of stuff happens, I think the Shy can be really good. So despite his inconsistencies, I haven't pushed all the way up to 8th. In 7th, and I want to remind you all, this is a biased list, so it's players that I'm really excited for and where I kind of think their ceilings are, not necessarily what my like 100% analytical brain is telling me to put these players. But in 7th, I have Thanatos, who is the top laner for Cloud9. I know that Thanatos had a not super ideal playoffs, but then again, pretty much all of Cloud9 had a not super ideal playoffs in Split 3, so it just sounded like they had some stage nerves and couldn't really figure out how to win on stage. But ignoring Split 3 playoffs, Cloud9 were the other best team in the LTA North. They were tied with FlyQuest in Split 3 regular season. They had 2 best-of-5 series against Fly in Split 2 playoffs, the second of which in Grand Finals ended up coming down to a super, super close situation where Fly made the call to go for a backdoor with no minions, and they had the damage to do it, and they ended while Cloud9 was doing the Elder Dragon. So, like, for the most part, Fly and C9 were super closely matched for all of regular season until the very, very end. And I thought that the best player on Cloud9, I wouldn't say by like a significant margin, but it was by a pretty sizable margin. I thought the best player on that team was Thanatos, or at the very least, by a significant margin, the player with the most potential to be fantastic was Thanatos. It felt like he was able to win all of his lanes. He was able to play pretty much every single standard matchup and do well no matter what champion you gave him. It felt like he was a player who could hard carry late game team fights. He would always have these big moments where he would put the team on his back and carry a team fight. So he's a player who I'm very, very excited for in the coming years. He's really young. I mean, again, I'll say again, I do think I'm biased towards Thanatos. I think I just want to see him succeed because I feel like he has a lot of potential. And then so that might be pushing him up a little bit further than he should be. But yeah, I mean, heading into 2026, I would not be too surprised if Thanatos ended up being the type of caliber of player who could contest a top 5 in the world spot in his role, even though he's playing in the LCS. In 6th, I have Bin. Bin is a player who has an astronomically high ceiling. He is someone who, if everything goes right for him, he can be the best top lane in the region. My issue with Bin was that last year, he was just not that. He had flashes of being really good, but for the most part, he was performing way below what my expectations for him were. He had a terrible Worlds, so I mean, like, we can say that, but even before Worlds, There were people who commented on kind of my weird placement of Bin on my pre-Worlds top lane tier list. I had him a lot lower than people thought that he should be. I had him in B tier, and that's because his performance issues weren't just tied to Worlds, it was also in Split 3. For pretty much the entirety of Split 3, Bin was really struggling. In his defense, part of that was because the team was trying to find what their identity was going to be, and in the past, BLG was a team who would play through Bin sometimes. Like every once in a while, they would give Bin a carry and play for topside and let Bin do his thing. This year, it wasn't really working for them, so they made a shift to play for bot side, to get Elk ahead and have Elk carry the games. And so Bin was on weak side duty, and that's not something that Bin has been excellent at for his career, so it was kind of a big learning process for him. And I think in LPL Split 3 playoffs, he ended up kind of figuring it out, and he was fine. But before that, he was not great. So heading into Worlds, I didn't think he was going to be amazing, and then at Worlds, he massively underperformed even my expectations. So heading into 2026, I don't know if I have as much faith in him as I would want to. But his ceiling is still tremendous. If he ends up being the best top laner in 2026, I wouldn't be that surprised. In 5th, I have Doran, who is going to be the top laner for T1. Doran is kind of a weird case where he is a player who, honestly, he's kind of similar to the Shy, where he will have these games every now and then where he just makes these absolutely ridiculous mistakes that look terrible. And you think that he's a complete inter and he's losing his team the game, but he'll also have these moments where he is getting a lot of stuff done in lane phase and he's generating leads, and sometimes he'll have these amazing team fights. I think that Doran has a couple of champions where he is definitely contesting the best spots in the world. Like, I think he's the best Gragas in the world. I think he is probably like a top 2 Jax in the world. It would be Bin or Doran. You can take your pick for Jax. I think he's really good at both of those. He had flashes last year. Specifically, I think that Doran's best moments were in Split 2 playoffs, so the Road to MSI playoffs. He had an Mbessa game that was extremely good. He had a Camille game that was extremely good. At Worlds, I didn't think he was amazing. I think that the general community sentiment was that he did better than I thought that he did. But for the most part, the ratings that I gave Doran do match my perception of him, where most of his ratings were either above average or below average. He had shockingly few average games. Like I think he had 2 games where I gave him a 5 out of 10, and then like 10 games that were above that, and then like 8 games that were below that. I don't know, it was a crazy spread. I don't think there was a single other player who had a spread like that, but that's just who Doran is to me. He's a very volatile player who can sometimes make these silly mistakes, but then other times he's playing really aggressive and getting his team massive leads. And I think those two things go hand in hand. He is a player who likes to overstay. He likes to kind of push his luck to see if he can generate more of an advantage. And sometimes his bluff works and he can get a lot done, and then other times teams will call him out for it and he'll get punished and he'll die. But to be honest, that's actually most of T1. That's something that T1 as a team just like to do a lot. They like to show up to things that they're not supposed to show up to, and then they'll just look at you and try to bluff their way into getting the objective or staying for the extra wave. And a lot of times it worked because enemy teams don't have perfect information, and so they end up giving the respect over. So it's an interesting play style. There's definitely upside and there's definitely downside. Overall, I think that Doran will be very solid, and I expect him to be a top 3 top laner in the LCK, which he was last year. When the dust settled, I think Doran was definitely a top 3 top laner in the LCK, and I don't see a reason for that to change, unless Siwu just has like a massive glow up or something. In 4th, I've got 369. I think there's an argument to be made that 369 for the entirety of 2025 was the best top laner coming out of the LPL. I think that the other top laner who you might give it to is Flandre. 369, for the most part, is a super solid player, regardless of whether his team is playing super well or whether they're running it down. It feels like 369 is always really solid. I thought that in the series against T1, where Top Esports ended up getting 3-0'd, I thought that 369 was completely fine in that series. I thought that anytime that Top Esports looked good at Worlds, 369 looked really good. Like, I thought that his Aatrox game against Aatrox game against G2 in Swiss Stage was one of the best individual games played at the entire tournament. I thought that his Aatrox in that game was fantastic. And for the most part, that's just kind of how I feel about 369. He's a player who is almost always either decent or really good. It feels like he's not a player who runs it down a lot. He's a fantastic weak side player. Let's see if yeah, 369 is projected to play for Top Esports in Split 1. Although Top Esports has a lot of weird stuff going on. I don't know how they're going to do next split. Like their projected roster as of right now is 369, Nio, Cream, Giachi, and Fengyu. Yeah, I don't know. That team's probably not going to do very well. I think that we might be getting another split of 369 getting jailed. We'll have to see. But I have a lot of respect for 369. I think he's going to be solid. In third, I have Zeus. I think everybody kind of knows how Zeus operates at this point. He is probably the most aggressive top laner on this list, and he is probably one of the most carry-oriented top laners on this list. I know that, for example, in 2025, he was one of the players who became super attached to Mbessa kind of right out of the gate, and then he was one of the best Mbessas in the world for the entire year. Even if the last Mbessa game that he played was kind of stinky at Worlds, before that his Mbessa was really good. I think for the most part in the LCK for the past maybe 3 years, since 2022, it's been Keen and Zeus fighting back and forth for that #1 spot. And basically what it comes down to is that Keen is kind of always the same player. He's always extremely stable, can play just about anything, will limit all of his mistakes, and then just be a strong player for his team. And then Zeus kind of has these ups and downs where sometimes he's the best top laner in the world, and he's on form, and he's destroying everybody and winning all of his lanes and carrying all of the games. And then sometimes he has these periods of being down where he's not as consistent and he's not that good, and he can lose lanes to players like Doran a lot. So Zeus, he's a very I don't really want to say that he's a coin flip player. He's not a coin flip player in the sense that like Doran or the Shy is, where you don't know what you're going to get on a game-to-game basis. He's more of like a phases player where sometimes he's really good for a stretch of time and sometimes he's really mediocre for a stretch of time. But I personally am somebody who still wants to believe that Zeus has it in him to be the best top laner in the world, so I have him pretty high on my list. I'm not going to put him in first in the way that I would have heading into 2025, just because I feel like after what happened in 2025, there's no way that I can, in good faith, put him at the top of my top lane list. But he's someone who I believe can get there. He's like who are the players who, if they were the best top lane in the world, I wouldn't be surprised. If it was Keen, Flandre, Zeus, or Bin, I wouldn't be that surprised. I think anybody else, I would be like, damn, really? But Zeus, even though I have him in third, he's somebody who definitely could get there. In second, I have Flandre. I think that for the last few years, Flandre has been a pretty solid player. He's always been somebody who I'm way higher on than most of the general Western audiences. I think that a lot of the West thinks that he is not that good because he doesn't have the strongest lane phase. He won't necessarily die in an isolated 1v1 or lose the game solo, but he is somebody who doesn't have the greatest laning in the world. He will sometimes go down 10-20 CS in these matchups that you should be going even in. But the thing about Flandre is that I feel like he is a player who is pretty much always making the right play, which I think is something that is actually very rare. There are very few players in the world who can seemingly always just know what the right play is and then make it, and I think that Flandre is one of those guys. And in 2025, I feel like that was definitely reflective. I was super impressed with how he looked pretty much all year. I thought he looked great in Split 1, I thought he was great in Split 2 in MSI, and I thought he was great in Split 3, and I thought he was the best top laner at Worlds 2025. Even though AL ended up making a quarterfinals exit, I did have him as my #1 best performing top laner after the event. So I don't think that Flandre has this crazy massive ceiling. I think he's a pretty known quantity, but it feels like he's really, at least last year, he definitely found his footing and found his role as just kind of being this super stable, always make the right play kind of player. So I have a lot of respect for him. I'm pushing him all the way up here with the assumption that a few of the more high octane, high ceiling players won't actually reach their ceiling and they'll end up below him. Then at #1, I have Keen. I think that Keen has been the best or second best top laner in the world pretty much every single year since like maybe like 2018 actually. I think that a lot of people, like, okay, people are coming around and starting to understand that Keen is an excellent top laner, but I think a lot of people don't realize just how phenomenal he has been for so long. Like, what would you even say? Like in 2018, the best top laner in the world was the Shy, but I think that Keen was right behind him, had an argument for second there. 2019, same thing, Keen was right behind the Shy. 2020, the best top laner in the world was Nogiri, but Keen was also right behind him. Then like in 2021 and 2022, I think that there's a solid argument that you would just have Keen first. And then after that, from 23 to 25, well, 23 and 24, it was like pick one between Keen, Zeus, and Bin, and then 25 was definitely Keen, so... This guy, he has just been either the best or like a top 2, top 3 top laner in the world for so long. He can do literally everything. Like Keen will just, teams will ask him to do so much. Like there are some teams where his role is to just pick Gragas and Ornn and be like the best weak side tank player ever. And then there are other times where he'll be tasked with playing stuff like Jace and Gwen, and he'll have more of a damage share and he'll have more of a carry role. And it feels like no matter what you put him on, he always knows how to play the lane matchups correctly. Like if he's supposed to get a lead, he knows how to get that lead. If he's supposed to go even, he knows how to go even. If he's supposed to lose, he knows how to minimize his losses. And then you get into team fights, he's fantastic in team fights, he's really good at map rotations. I think that Keen is a super solid player, and I would have him as my best top laner heading into 2026. So yeah, that's my top lane list. I plan on getting the other 4 roles, jungle, mid, bot support. I plan on getting those out before whenever the first regular season game ends up happening. I don't know when that's supposed to be. I would assume it's going to be near the end of January or the beginning of February, something like that. But I plan on getting all 5 of those out. If you're looking for region power rankings videos, those are probably going to show up on my second channel, so the channel called Bonus Poro. And those will be pretty much, I'll just sit down for like 15-30 minutes and just talk it out. So it's going to be super unprofessional, definitely not edited in the way that any of my main channel videos were for Worlds. So don't expect super high quality stuff for that, but I am going to get out team power rankings videos where I kind of go over all of the roster changes and just give my general thoughts on the teams. The first one out should be the LEC one, and that one should actually come out maybe like a day or 2 after this video comes out, or maybe even before, depending on how I choose to edit stuff. That video is going to be the first one out because LEC was the first team to finish their roster changes. And then after that, it's going to be LCS and LCK are both finished. And then CB LoL is almost done. I think that LPL is going to have a lot of dominoes fall very quickly. In terms of like projected rumors, LPL is like 80% done. And then LCP will probably be last. We know almost next to nothing for LCP. We know a lot of players who have left, but not much on who's actually sticking around and what those completed rosters might look like. So yeah, that's the timeline, is these 5 role ranking projection videos for the main channel, and then the 6 power ranking videos on the second channel. But yeah, let me know who you all think are going to be the best top laners for 2026. Let me know what you agree and disagree with, if there are any top laners that I missed completely. Like, I think some top laners real quick that I'll mention now that I didn't mention in the video at all, that people might rate highly. I know that there are some people who think that like Photon and Castle could be really good. If you're a CB LoL fan, maybe you highly rate somebody like FNB. If you're somebody who's like super high on potential, I think that a player that could be exciting to look out for is YSKM. There is a chance that because Talon is out of the LCP, that the team that replaces them is Frank Esports, and if Frank end up keeping their roster, then YSKM will be a top laner in the LCP. I think that there's potential for him to be really good. So yeah, that's all I've got for this one. Nothing else to say for top lane rankings. I have a Patreon, so link for that will be in the description. If you want to support my channel more while I'm making these videos, then go and check that out. You can see here on the graphic that there's a lot of Poro commissions that I've drawn. If you get the $10 tier, then I will draw a custom Poro commission for you, and then your name and your Poro will show up on this end screen. Yep, that's all I have for you. I'll see you all next time. Bye.